So let's just do a quick review. This week it's actually an interesting chapter what we're going to do. It's a continuation of last week. We are on page 27. If you have it, it says 27 in the bottom. It says Yud Aleph at the top. But we're going, that was last week, so I'm just repeating last week's. Chapter 9. We're actually going to start, we finished chapter 7, we're going to chapter 8. But I'm just going, as a review, we talked about last time Klippas Noga. And we discussed that there's a klippa that we can elevate, bring up to God. This is a job of a Jew, to mingle with the worldly matters that we can elevate. That's what we discussed last week. Today we're going to continue it, and today, interestingly enough, it's the only places in Tanya it actually mentions the whole concept of heaven and hell. It just mentions it not because it needs to, just a little mention over here, but since we can have a small discussion about it just to understand what it is in a Jewish view, because a lot of people have the wrong impressions of what the concepts are. So let's start. We are on page 32 in the English, where it says chapter 8, or 33 in the Hebrew, where it says chapter 8. So, Perek Het, the 8th chapter, Ve'od, and furthermore, as you can see, it's a continuation of last week, and furthermore, Zot be'ma'achalot asurot. One has to know about forbidden foods. This is a concept you should all know. Throughout the Torah, throughout the Mishnah, throughout the Gemara, where it says forbidden fruits, it doesn't only refer to fruits, it's a euphemism usually for relationships. For example, how do we know this? When Yosef, you remember Yosef was the wife of Potiphar, come to Yosef, and she told him, come over to me. And he told her back, how can I do that? My master, which means her husband, gave the whole kitchen open to me, except this bread. So again, in the Torah, in the Mishnah, in the thing, in order to discuss it in there, it usually will discuss. It's not that it's not food; it's also food. But it's not only food. That's right. So it says, Zot be'ma'achalot asurot. This is, you have to know about forbidden foods. Shelekach nikra'im b'shem isur, like we mentioned last time. The word forbidden in Hebrew means isur, which means tied. They're tied, they're jailed. Mipnei, this is going to be something very controversial. And we'll have to discuss it. What's the controversy? Imagine Moshe Rabbeinu or King David. We've put in front of him a steak, a nice little steak, kosher steak, of course, we tell him. And then he makes all the kavanah. He eats it with the right intentions, like we said, because he needs to elevate it. He eats it because he wants to elevate it to godliness. And he eats it with the right intention. But מפני מי שאכל מאכל אסור, somebody who ate a forbidden food, בלא הודע, that piece of steak that they gave him happened to be not kosher. I didn't know, he didn't know, it just happened to be not kosher. He didn't, something went wrong, somebody switched it, whatever the thing is. There was no knowledge, he had the full intention to do the right thing. So what's happening now? What are we going to say in this instance? And he ate it l'shem shamayim. He ate it for the sake of heavens, not for the taste, not for the desire. He didn't bring it down. He ate it for the sake of heaven. La'avod Hashem bekoach achilai. He only ate it because he was thinking about God. I'll be able to perform commandments with this power. I'll be able to learn Torah with this. And then, Gam Pa'al ve'asa ken. Not only he ate it, afterwards he did learn Torah. He did do the mitzvah with the power of those foods that he ate, that he thought they were kosher. Ve'kara, and he learned Torah. Ve'itpalel, and he prayed. Bekoach achila hahi, with the power of that eating. En hachayut sheba ola umitlabeshet. The vitality of that food, or the energy of that food, let's call it, does not go up and doesn't get dressed betevot Torah, in the words of the Torah. It doesn't connect. It's a wrong energy. That's why it's called Isur. Isur means you don't have the capacity to take it out of jail. It is jailed within the klipa. So the person can have all the right intentions in the world. There's nothing he can do. Kmo ha'eter, just like if it would have been a kosher state. Why? Mipnei isura, because it is jailed b'idei asitra acha. It's jailed inside the klipa. There's no way to elevate it. That's what God tells you. Stay away from the things. You will never be able to elevate them. Mishalosh klipot atmeot. What happens though? This is an interesting thing. If it's not Isur from the Torah, it's only a prohibition from the rabbis. It's only a prohibition for the rabbis. What then? What happens then? So he tells you, Ve'afilu hu Isur derabanan. Even if it's only a prohibition from the rabbis. That's a different discussion for a different time. Why? But even if it is for a prohibition from the rabbis, and then he gives us a rule. Shechamurim divrei sofrim yoter midivrei Torah. There's a concept that the words of the rabbis are stricter than the words of the Torah. In other words, when the rabbis tell us not to do something, in our eyes it should be even more strict than if God told us. Simple explanation. We're not going to go into the whole thing. It's not our issue right now. The simple explanation for this, why? Because God knows, God put in the Torah a rule, that the rule in the Torah that every generation there's going to be rabbis, and every generation will have their own trials, and the rabbis have the power under certain rules to institute new rules so that generation is not going to fail within that thing. And since God knew that people are not going to look at the rabbi's word as important as the Torah words, the God put in the concept that Isur the Rabbanan, a prohibition from the Rabbanan, should be in your eyes even more than a prohibition from the Torah. I can give you an example. The whole concept of the reality of this world is determined by us, by men, by the rabbis. Where do we see this? The first commandment that we're ever giving to the Jewish nation, very good, was the commandment of how to declare the first of the month. Because Pesach was the first holiday that was given. So in order to know when Pesach is, you have to know when the first of the month is. And that power to determine the first of the month, there's actually 2 days that it can play. And who chooses the 2 days? He gives us the power. And it says, when we choose it, that day becomes holy. In other words, it's man who determines the holiness of the day, not God. Unlike Shabbos. By Shabbos, God determines it, not man. By holidays, we determine it. Okay?
I have one question about this subject, about from the Rabbanan, if it's not. And if the guy see it the same way and he eat the chicken, and let's say the chicken from the Rabbanan is not good, and he didn't know.
Wait, it's coming up.
Okay.
ואפילו הוא איסור דרבנן. Why? שחמורים דברי סופיות. So even if it's איסור דרבנן, it's still what? Cannot elevate.
But he can elevate because it's kosher. Or it's not. It's not
God says once the Rabbanan have the power, think what
But they have the power to elevate.
just think.
So it's not a
So let's explain it. It's good that you bring the question. So just like the human beings have the power to make a mundane day and to make it into a holy day, and they can take a holy day and take it into a mundane day, the rabbis have the power to take food which is kosher and make it asur, and make it prohibited. The same idea. Yeah, okay? And now we're going to come to a new concept that's going to bring us to the interesting concept of discussion about heaven and hell. ולכן גם היצר הרע. As we know, we all have evil inclinations. We have desires to do wrong. Yeah? So the yetzer hara, whenever a person has a desire to do wrong, וכוח המתאווה, and sometimes, let's give the famous examples because it's easier for everybody to relate. We don't want to dilly-dally. Sometimes you have a desire to be with your wife. Yeah? Sometimes you have a desire to be with the neighbor's wife. So it says, what happens when you have a desire to be with the neighbor's wife? Or let's take it even, people are going to look at me, Rabbi, you're crazy, but I'm going to say it because in order just to have the understanding, somebody has a desire to be with a sheep. Yeah? He has a desire to be with a sheep. Yeah? So if a person finds himself with a desire to be with a sheep, what should he think about himself?
It's a low level.
What do you mean I'm a low level? Oh, so exactly, we're going to discuss it. So we think in our mind, yeah, that's why I brought the example. In our mind, the desire to desire the neighbor's wife, that's not as bad as the sheep.
Yeah.
Right? Over here, it tells you it's exactly the same. So because we give ourselves a leeway, what's so bad? I just looked there for 1 second. So it tells you. So if a person finds himself having desires for things that are prohibited in the Torah, so if you have a desire, things that are permitted, kosher things, that's okay. I mean, it's not okay. We discussed it. It's not okay. It's klipas noiga. You have to do it for the right reasons. We discussed this. But if a person finds himself having desires for prohibited things, that's a problem. And what's the problem is that he has in himself now energy towards klipa. In other words, he is attracted to the klipa. This is called, in Kabbalistic terms, we're going to read the words, Hushed Mishedin Nuchrein. It is a demon from foreign demons. In other words, it's not natural. So let's explain what he's saying. Just like it is unnatural, it's not natural for a person to desire to have a sheep as a wife, so it is unnatural to have a desire for pig, to eat pig. So it is unnatural to have a desire to do anything against the Torah. So if a person finds desires to go against the Torah, yeah, he should know that it is unnatural. It's not his status. It's not who he is. How did he get there? We'll discuss in the Tanya later on how he got there.
So it's not natural.
It's not the way it's not. God did not create you like it. That's what it means, not natural. God created you without that desire. This desire you formed by your own self through putting yourself into that situation. Just like no normal person, no normal person walks in the street one day and is going to say, I'm going to mug an old woman, right? Nobody says, I'm going to take an old woman, put her over the head and take her money. Nobody would say such a thing. I can see myself doing it. But after a person has been a drug addict for 5-10 years, he's able to do it. But nobody comes into the situation with that desire. It's not a natural desire of a human being. So over here it tells us, it's not a natural desire for a Jew to have a desire to what? To all the things that the Torah prohibited. So if you did find yourself having such a desire, if the neighbor's wife walking down the street caught your eye, you should know you did something wrong. In other words, you shouldn't have that desire. If you have a desire for your own wife, you did it. That's natural. You have a desire to eat kosher ice cream, that's natural. That's the way God made us. But those are not natural. These we created ourselves, as we talked earlier. Shu yetzer hara, this is the evil inclination, shel umot ha'olam, of the nations of the world, but not of the Jews. Shenifshotehem, we are on page 35, that their soul, mishabosh klipot atmeot, are from the 3 klipos that are impure. Ma she'en ken, but it is not so. Hayetzer hara vekoach hamitaveh ledvarim mutarim, the evil inclination and the desire to permissible things, kosher steak, our own wives, lemalot ta'avato, but you're not doing it because of God. In other words, God is not in a picture. Yeah, the desire for the wife. Lemalot ta'avato, you do it only to fulfill your base desires. Hu shed mishedin Yehudin. This is also an energy, but it's a Jewish bad energy. It's not a non-Jewish bad energy. It's a Jewish bad energy, let's call it. Lefi, why? As we explained last time in chapter 7, because that type of energy can be re-elevated afterwards to good things. For example, a person had a desire to eat 5 scoops of ice creams or 5 jugs of ice creams. That was his supper. He didn't want to eat proper food. That's what I wanted to eat. Yeah, nobody eats a whole thing of ice cream for the service of God. The guy decided to. Okay. Afterwards, though, he can still elevate it. How? He has energy now. He can learn Torah with the energy. He can do commandments with the energy. He can put on tefillin with the energy. So that can be elevated. Okay.
So the desire is problematic even if you didn't act on it.
That's right. No, depends.
Punished by death, like we study in the Parsha. Have relation with your sister, punished by death.
Yes.
But
not everything is punished by death.
But you talk about your sister, your aunt, there were all kinds of...
For private relation, in food, there's no problem. For example, in food matters, it's not as severe.
So the desire, even if you didn't act on it, is problematic.
It's not, very good question. Thank you for asking the question. It's a very good question. The desire itself is not problematic. It's not a sin.
Okay.
It's not a sin to have the desire. It shows you where you are.
Good.
It's not a sin. It's not a sin to have a desire. Why? You don't have control over your desires.
Why?
I like my neighbor's wife. What can I do? You know what I can do? Now I should, I have a desire for my neighbor's wife. It's a clue for me to change myself, to do something about it. If I want to have a desire, I have a desire to be with my wife. Yeah, okay, that's normal. You know, maybe I should do it, decrease a little bit, but that's a normal thing. But if I have a desire to do both neighbor's wife, I should, as we're going to see later on in the Tanya, what I should do. It will tell you what you should do. The desire itself is not a sin. The act, as we're going to, that's something else. Okay. Ach mikol makom. So even though a person, as we learned last time, ate the ice cream just for his own desires, nothing to do with God, kosher ice cream we're talking about, kodem shechazar lekdusha, before he actually took that energy and used it for holiness, hu sitra achra veklipa, it becomes sitra achra veklipa, and like we discussed last time, אחר כך הרשימו, וגם אחר כך הרשימו ממנו נשאר דבוק בגוף. And then there's an impression from that desire. In other words, you brought it down to the level of a pig, even though it was kosher ice cream for that moment. And even though you use it afterwards for good stuff, when it absorbed into the body because of our desire, it became the substance of pig. It's the substance of pig that can get re-elevated and be used. Liyot, ki mekol ma'achal u'mashke, because from every food and drink, na'asa tekef dam u'basar mibsaro. It becomes part of the body. It becomes part of the blood, part of the flesh. ולכן צריך הגוף לחיבוט הקבר. And like we mentioned last time, this is why in the burial, we drop the body into the grave. We don't let it just sink into the grave, to the bone. We leave it off the floor like this a little bit, and then we drop the body into it. Why? Because that dropping, lenakoto veletaharo mitumato. It takes the impurity of all those permissible food that we ate, not for the sake of heavens. It purifies the body from that impurity. Shekibel behanaat olam hazeh, that he received when he enjoyed the pleasures of the world, veta'anugav, and all the enjoyments, mitumat klipat noga veshedin miyudin, from the klipat noga, and the energy, the Jewish energy, which is not good. In other words, it's the Jewish energy. Jewish energy means desires for permissible things. Non-Jewish energy, non-Jewish demons, is desires for prohibited things. Yeah? To give yourself a thing, a desire for somebody else's wife is a non-Jewish energy. A desire for your own wife is a Jewish energy. A desire for a kosher steak is a Jewish energy. A desire for a non-kosher steak is a non-Jewish energy. So who doesn't need to be dropped into the grave? There are some people who don't need. Who? Ela im ken mishelo nehene, somebody who did not enjoy me'olam hazeh kol yamav, from anything from this world, his entire days. Can you imagine a person who never enjoyed physical pleasures? Who is such a person? He gives an example. Ke Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the person who compiled the Mishnah, on his deathbed, he said to his students over there that I didn't enjoy anything in this world kemelo nima. There's no physical pleasure that I enjoy. Why is it strange? Because Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, very good, he was very rich. Not only he was very rich, it says that he had the riches of Alexander the Great. They lived in the same time. Yeah? So it says, the saying in the Gemara is, me'olam, it was never the plate of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi or the plate of Caesar was left from radishes. The radishes was like big things over there, and you can imagine over there it's everything seasonal in those times. But it says they were so rich that they had radishes the entire year. That's how rich they were. And this Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, even though in my realm, in my things, I had all these things, I never ate them for what? For these things. I'll give you another story. Oh, the love of God is a level of pleasure that's not called physical. It's something else. I'll give you an example. People think, I'll give you two examples. One from a tzaddik, from a righteous person, and one not from a righteous person. Yeah? From a person like us, on our level. The first example is from a righteous person. When the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was a small boy, I think he was probably like 8 or 9 years old, he came over to his father and he told his father, says, Daddy, I don't know what's happening today, but my prayers today were completely different than ever. I really had a connection to God when I prayed today like never before. And I don't know why. Later on, they found out that on the counter, they had a cup of vodka. And he was thirsty, he was thirsty, so he drank the cup of vodka. Imagine a 9-year-old drinking a cup of vodka and not knowing he's drinking a cup of vodka. He was drunk. He just didn't know. So this is an example from what? It is an example from a righteous person. But people don't relate to it. So he's not concerned. He's not thinking. He's not thinking about taste. He's thinking about, I'm doing it for God. Yeah? This is one example. But I'll give you an example from a person who's like us. When I say like us, I'm not talking about a human being. Not somebody who's righteous. There was one of the Hasidim who the Frierdiker Rebbe also sent over here to America. He sent over here to America to raise money for the yeshivas in Europe. America was always, the big, where the money lays. So he came over to America and then he went back to Lubavitch. So when he came to Lubavitch, they asked him over there, how's America? The Hasidim asked America. So he told him, it's a very strange country. So they asked him, what do you mean it's a very strange country? So he says, because in America, nobody's going to understand what I'm saying, but I'll explain. He says, in America, they take butter and they put it on the bread and then they eat it together. I know everybody's looking at me strange. What's so strange about it? Because in Lubavitch at that time, nobody did it. You needed the energy from butter, you ate butter. You needed the energy from bread, you ate bread. So nobody thought about the idea amongst those Hasidim that you can actually combine the pleasures of butter and bread. And this is a regular person. I'm not talking about Zeu. You see, we are so decadent. We live in such a decadent society. We've got everything from everything. You ask, why do we have desires for prohibited things? Because the more we live within the world of desires, the more desires we want. The less we live within the world of the physical desires, the less desires we want. That's the idea. Okay. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh, this is an example of somebody who ate all those great things. But he was a righteous person. So he never had the connection to this greatness, pleasures of the flesh. So let's continue. What about al dvarim betelim beheiter? What about a person, let's take an example, who wastes his time, but he is permitted to? For example, what does it mean, waste his time? I don't know, he watches the news, he watches football. Let's take an example. Yeah? But he's allowed to. So he says, what do you mean he's allowed to? Because he went to work, he made a living, he came back home, it's late at night now, he wants to relax for half an hour before he goes to sleep, he watches a football game. What's wrong? So he says, for a regular Jew, he's not allowed to. Why is he not allowed to? Do something. Do something for God. How can you watch football for God? Yeah? Do something for God. What does it mean, do something for God? Learn Torah. You have an obligation to learn Torah. So, open a book and learn Torah. Even the footballer cannot learn. That's what it says. But this guy cannot learn Torah. Why can't he learn Torah? He doesn't know. What do you want from him? He doesn't know. He doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know how to write. It's not like today that you have English, Russian, whatever you want, books all around. No, he doesn't know. He's a simpleton. Or maybe he does have, the guy is a simpleton. He's got nothing over here. He's got an IQ of 70. He's not capable of learning. Yeah, maybe that. Kegon, Am Haaretz. For example, somebody, she'eino yachol lilmod. He's not capable of learning. So is he allowed now to sit and watch football? So it says, צריך לטהר נפשו מטומאה זאת דקליפה. Even he needs to purify his soul from that klipa. How? This is when now we're going to go to concepts about heaven and hell. But before we even discuss heaven and hell, let me just make an introduction. The whole concept of hell that most people think about, they get from the Christians. And hell by the Christians have got nothing to do with hell by Judaism. You know, if you want a definition, a good definition of when we ever discuss these concepts, think about one thing. Hell is not a punishment. By the Christianity, hell is a punishment. By us, hell is not a punishment. Hell is something, so I'll tell you, hell is a good thing. So let me explain what I mean. Yeah? Let's say there's a young kid and he's running around on a pile of metal. Right? He's running around on a pile of metal. So his mother tells him, young kid, you'll run around on this pile of metal, you're going to get cut with my metal, and then we'll have to come to the doctor and they'll have to give you a tetanus shot. So you think to yourself, what is she telling him? Is the tetanus shot something good or something bad?
Good.
The tetanus shot is something that heals him. It's something that's good. But he doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to experience such healing. Right? So he's afraid to go, because he thinks about the needle. So he says, I'd rather not go over there. This is exactly the same concept in Judaism. The so-called Gehenom that a soul has to, before 11 months or 12 months, we're going to discuss later on in the Tanya itself how much the soul has to go through, yeah? It's a cleaning process for the soul. It's a place where the soul gets rid of its impurities. It gets cleaned. And we're going to see why it needs to get cleaned. It needs to get cleaned because with the dirtiness of the physical world, it's not able to understand godliness to the place it's going. It's not able to appreciate godliness. In order to see godliness, you need to erase all those shields that he grabbed onto that doesn't let it see him. So all the so-called Gehenom by Jewish culture is not something we're going to see. It is not fun. Just like the tetanus shot is not fun. Yeah? But don't look at it like the Christians do. That you go...
It's not permanent.
First of all, it's not permanent. I'll tell you, because the soul is not living in a place where time exists. So, not permanent when it comes to time, I don't know. We'll have to discuss that also. It's hard to explain right now, but we'll discuss it later on. Yeah, but it's not permanent to those who live over here when they're thinking about those souls. But for the soul, it might be. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's a place where it gets cleaned.
Can you think about this like a shirt that needs to be cleaned?
Exactly
One
the same.
shirt need to be cleaned.
Exactly the same. The imagery, yeah. The imagery throughout prayers, if you look at Yom Kippur, if you look at Yom Kippur prayer, if you look at our prayers, all the time that what it says, it's like a crimson shirt, it's like a red shirt that we wash in heat. So in heat and in cold, in order to take the blood out, in order to take the things out. That's the whole idea.
Is it a punishment?
No, it's not a punishment, it's a consequence. There is a consequence. There are no this is another concept. We will discuss it a little bit today. There's no punishments in Judaism. It's very strange. Or some of the punishments, the punishment is in order to do something. In other words, if the punishment doesn't have an effect, there's no punishment in Judaism itself. I'll give you an example. It says that for some sins, a person has to get lashes. You do something wrong, the policeman comes, and you get lashes. Let's say 5 lashes. What happens if, and in order to get the lashes, you have to stand in front of a doctor. The doctor has to assess you, how many lashes you can take, and then they decide, let's say that the person was able to take 10 lashes. Or usually it's in groups of 3s, 9 lashes. Yeah? 9 lashes. And they give the person 1, 2, and he sold his pants because he because he's so afraid. So it says you're not allowed to give him any more lashes. Why? Oh, because it's obvious the punishment is there. Yeah, it's punishment that he learned. That's right. So in other words, just to punish for the sake of punishment doesn't exist. That's why there's no concept of jail in the Torah. There's no concept of jail. You don't put people in jail. The only places there's jail in the Torah is when you don't know what the law is. So you keep him in jail until the judge says what to do with him. But after that, jail is not a punishment. Sell him as a slave. Make him do retribution. There's no such thing as a jail punishment. Okay? So what do you do in such a thing to the neshama? How do you impurify a neshama that, let's say, wasted time? Thank God. Thank God. We all waste time constantly. Yeah, it's part of the things that no matter in what level of Judaism you are, yeah, a great time of the day is used wasted time. And trust me, I was in yeshiva, I was learning 18 hours a day, right? Out of the 18 hours of the day that I was learning, so-called learning, 9 hours was wasting time. 9 hours you're talking about this guy, 2 hours you're talking about that guy, 3 hours you're talking about politics, 2 hours you're talking about this, and in between you also learn a little bit. Yeah, that's what usually takes place. So what happens in all this wasted time? So this is what happens. What happens to the neshama? Gilgula bekaf hakela. It goes into a gilgul bekaf hakela. Now what's the idea of kaf hakela? Kaf hakela is a concept like this. Think about a person whose father always took care of him, helped him, but he wasn't aware that his father, he went against his father. Yeah? And then he became an adult. And he realized how much his father loved him and how much his father really wants him. And he recognized, my father is King David, right? After, let's say, he's 40, my father is King David. And now he sits at the table of King David. And he's discussing words of Torah with King David. And a second later, they take him to the place he was. The pain of the experience of the place he was when he was wasting his time. Remember, wasting his time is, as a son of King David, you were supposed to fight for the Jewish state. You were supposed to fight and protect Jews. And you were sitting down and smoking marijuana and enjoying the views as the terrorists were coming in and going into Be'eri. That's what you were doing. And then again, it puts you back into King David. And King David is looking at you. He doesn't have, King David, he loves you. You're his son. But imagine your feelings. Now that you appreciate King David, you appreciate the land of Israel, you love every Jew, all of a sudden he puts you back, and you were supposed to stop the terrorists, and what did you do? I was smoking at that time. That's what kaf hakela is. Kaf hakela is, and just think, the spiritual pain of such an embarrassment, and especially that King David, knowing that King David still loves you, even if it makes it even worse now. Yeah? So this is kaf hakela.
So God doesn't punish us.
No, but the experience of that embarrassment cleans us to be able to experience, because we are not capable of sitting next to God. What does it mean? Because of the embarrassment of how we let the enemy come in and we didn't care about, we just wasted our time. This is the idea. So until those embarrassment experience, we go through them again, we experience them again, until the neshama is able to sit next to godliness with knowing, okay, that's it, now I'm calm. I went through the pain of the punishment, so-called, of going through this. Okay. But So this is for a person who wasn't capable of learning Torah. Or a person who wasn't capable of doing something correct. Unfortunately, all of us are capable. אבל לדיבורים אסורים, but for speeches talks that are forbidden, כמו ליצנות ולשון הרע, for speaking לשון הרע about people. And if you ask what לשון הרע is, 99% of the things you read on Facebook and X and Instagram is לשון הרע. Maybe 100%, but I don't want to say 100%, but 99% is. וכיוצא בהם, שהם משלוש קליפות הטמאות, that this is prohibited things. This is completely prohibited. אין כף הקלע לבדו מועיל לטהר. The embarrassment of כף הקלע is not enough on its own. It's not going to impurify the person that he'll be able to sit next to God and experience godliness quietly. The neshama cannot do that. ולהבעיר טומאתון מהנפש, and to completely take the impurity from the soul, רק צריכה לירד לגיהנום. It needs to go down to Gehenom. A quick explanation of what Gehenom is. Yeah, I'm not going to go deep into it because we're not into the thing right now. Think about this. The amount of desire, if you had a fiery desire towards, there's a rule in koshering thing. The rule in koshering thing, if you have a pot and it became not kosher at a certain temperature, let's say it was 400 degrees, in order to make it kosher, you need 400 plus. You either need 400 degrees or more. Yeah? This is what the idea of how you make a pot kosher. Same thing for a neshama. The amount of, when a person had a desire for a prohibited thing, let's say it was a prohibited woman, he had a desire for a prohibited thing, and he had an enjoyment from a prohibited activity. And usually, when we're talking about women, we're talking about fire. You know, you have that fiery desires. So the relative amount of that fiery desire, one has to experience that pain for the spiritual embarrassment, let's call it, comparative to the fire. And just remember that it works like a pie. 1 degree over here, in the center of the earth, when you look at a pie, becomes thousands of degrees out there. So in the level of the neshama, 1 degree of heat can be 1,000 degrees over there. So the spiritual embarrassment or the spiritual pain that one has to go through can be an enormous amount. And this is what Gehenom is. Just in short, this is what Gehenom. It needs to be relevant to the amount that a person did. Over here. וכן, and also, מי שאפשר לו לעסוק בתורה, somebody that is capable of learning Torah, ועוסק בדברים בטלים, and instead of learning Torah, just to mention someone, I don't want to mention his name, but I'm going to mention what he does. He watches X all day long to see what's going on with Trump and Israel and everything. Somebody like me. ועוסק בדברים בטלים. Yeah? אין כף הקלע לבדו מועיל לנפשו. כף הקלע, everybody's laughing, but it's a thing over here. Yeah? There's going to be payment to pay. Yeah? It's true. I'm glad that it's כף הקלע לבדו מועיל לנפשו. So כף הקלע, just the embarrassment of going against the system, like we said, jumping back and forth, that's not enough. למרכה ולזקקה. רק עונשים חמורים שמענשים על ביטול תורה בפרטות. There's heavy punishments that has to go on the fact that you could have done a mitzvah, you could have learned Torah, מלבד עונש הכללי לכל ביצוע מצווה, besides the fact that God gave you a commandment and you do it, מחמת עצלות. Why didn't you do it? Usually, any mitzvah, why don't we do it? Any mitzvah we don't do, usually 99% of the time, is because we're lazy. It takes energy. It takes energy to pray the proper way. It takes energy to learn Torah for 3 hours. It takes energy. It takes energy to learn, forget 3 hours, it takes energy to learn Torah for 10 minutes. It takes energy to make yourself sit down and learn. After 10 minutes, it becomes easier. But the first 10 minutes, so the laziness comes because we were called to godliness. So because you were called to godliness, God is going to put us a pain of coldness. Just like there's a pain of heat. Yeah? It's called a Gehenom shel sheleg and Gehenom shel esh. There's a Gehenom for fire. If you have a desire to be with somebody else's wife and you did somebody else's wife, yeah, so that you will have to go to a Gehenom of fire. And if you were just too lazy, you didn't do any of the commandments, you have to go to a Gehenom of sheleg, a Gehenom of ice.
So there is punishment.
It's not a punishment. You dirtied up the soul. In order to experience godliness now, the soul has to be washed. Way to wash something. So some things, in order to wash them, you have hot water. You have to put them through hot water. Some things, in order to take them out of the cloth, you need to put them in ice. Bubble gum.
It's not your own choosing, though. It's being imposed onto
Oh,
you.
you would want to go through it.
Would want to.
Yeah.
But the same day you ahead, tell you, don't get your neshama dirty. If it will, that's what's going to happen. Don't put your hands in the fire. If you put it, you'll burn it.
Yeah. It's not.
Not a punishment.
Let's discuss it this way. Every person experiences this. Every person experiences it, except righteous people. Someone like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi doesn't experience because when you don't dirty the soul, you don't. But every soul experiences it down here on earth. There's no souls who don't experience. This is why we say Kaddish for 11 months. Why do we say, by the way, we should actually say Kaddish for 12 months because it takes a year. The reason why we don't say Kaddish for 12 months is because we don't want to say that the person was not righteous. Yeah? It says even, so he says that we don't want to say that the person is not, God can take care of the last month. Yeah?
When there is death, is that a punishment? Like also, when you act on forbidden relationships, once you're dead, you're dead. Is that a punishment?
Many times, which we're going to learn later on, death itself is kapara. The death itself makes the atonement. Yeah? This is why when certain sins that the person does, there's a death penalty. It's not a punishment, it's an atonement to the soul. Even if a person murdered, for example, if the court kills him, then his soul can go to sit with God. If though nobody saw, and he thought he hid it, right? He doesn't get that atonement, and then his soul doesn't get that atonement. And which means what? This is called kares. His soul gets cut off from the Jewish nation. He just ceases to exist, and he doesn't go to God. So sometimes it's better if you get the death penalty than you don't. Again, we'll talk about it later on. Okay? מלבד עונש הכליל, מחמת עצלות בגדם של שלד, מבואר במקום אחר. And over here it's going to say something very, very outlandish in the end part. What happens if a person loves science, loves politics, and now he uses his minds for science? וכן העוסק בחכמות אומות העולם, somebody who learns in the wisdoms of the world, בכלל דברים בטלים יחשב. It says this is considered to be like wasting your time. We're going to discuss if it's really true soon. לעניין עוון ביטול תורה. When it comes to the commandment of not learning Torah, כמו שהכתוב בהלכות תלמוד תורה, like it says in the laws of learning Torah, ועוד זאת יתרה טומאתה של חוכמת האומות על טומאת דברים בטלים. Over here it's going to say something very controversial. It says, you know what? It's better for the person to watch a football game or to watch UFC all day long than to go learn science. Very straight. Says it's going to explain to you why. Because when you watch UFC, two guys beat each other up all day long, yeah, for 12 hours straight, that's what you do. Your higher faculties, you did not defile your higher faculties. You just defiled the lower faculties of the person. But when you took the highest faculty of a human being, which is your brain, and that you subjugated to something else, not Torah, that's even worse. We're going to just wait, because obviously there's going to be a twist over here. שאינו מלביש ומטמא רק המידות מיסוד הרוח. Because when he just watches football or UFC, he's not really encompassing his human side. שבנפשו האלוקית בטומאת קליפת נוגה. שבדברים בטלים הבאים מיסוד הרוח הרע שבקליפה זו. Because he's only doing it, the aspect of emotions into UFC. He gets a high from it. זו, בנפשו הבהמית כדלעיל. We're in page 26. But he doesn't impurify Chabad שבנפשו. He doesn't impurify the intellect in his soul. מאחר שהם דברי שטות ובורות, שגם השוטים ועם הארץ יכולים לדבר כן. Because UFC, anybody can watch. Yeah? But over here, when you take the highest faculty of human being, and the highest faculty, instead of dedicating it to God, you dedicate it to something else, you are impurifying your highest faculty. מה שאין כן בחוכמות האומות, it is not so when you learn with the highest faculties, you learn the sciences of the world, הוא מלביש ומטמא בחינת חב"ד שבנפשו. You impurified the intellect in his soul, in your godly soul, בטומאת קליפת נוגה, שבחוכמות אלו, שנפלו שם בשבירת הכלים, בחינת אחוריים של חוכמה דקדושה כדרך דרכן. I'm not going to explain what it is. It's a concept in Kabbalah. The concept in Kabbalah that says that you should know that you have a desire to do specifically that. Yeah? The godly soul is attracted specifically to sciences. It tells you. It will find more pleasure in sciences than in any other place. In other words, it will be attracted to that more than anything else, and he explained it in Kabbalah, but it says obviously it's a bit severe what he does, so he's give us two leniencies over here, two leniencies. אלא אם כן עושה אותן קרדום לחתוך בהן. But if he makes them an axe to cut with, which means he becomes a scientist because that's his job. He wants to make a living out of it. He wants to make a living, to take care of his family. That's why he became a scientist. דהיינו כדי להתפרנס בהם ברווח. He wanted to make a living in order to be able to support his family, לעבוד השם, to serve God. That's the idea. In other words, then it doesn't make a difference between a scientist or a wood chopper. What's the difference? Yeah. Or there's another way. So this is one thing. or שיודע להשתמש בהם לעבודת השם. That he knows how to use those information for the service of God. In other words, he's learning science in order to transform science and to bring it closer to godliness. או לתורתו. I'll give you an example from the physical world. The Rebbe would never let a yeshiva bachur go to college or go to university. There's no such cases. that the Rebbe will ever let a yeshiva bacher go to college and go to university. The Rebbe himself attended the highest universities, you know, in again, what's the difference? Yeah, that's the difference. On the other hand, if a person who went to university, in the middle of university, came to the Rebbe would 99% of the time would tell him, finish your studies and use it for a job. Yeah? So this is what. So there's two things you can do with it. You can either finish your study, use it for a job, 100%, that's one thing. But after that, for example, if a person just wants to go into it because, see, if you use your mind to learn Torah, that's one thing. You know where I see it? I see it in myself. I like sciences. That's what I learned in college. Yeah, I learned chemistry. I learned physics. Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did besides the computer science. I like it. There's many times that I can read an article online on something that I'm interested in, and I can concentrate for hours. I can read the article and concentrate. Tell me to go learn Torah. You know what a battle it is for me to say, over here it is. That's an example of, instead of using my brain to learn Torah, this is what I'm not making money out of it. But it says that the Klippa has such an attraction to the godly soul, it wants the godly soul to go towards it. This is why you will see that there's many Jewish people who are attracted to the sciences. That's why Jews are top of the sciences in many, many, many fields, because the attraction to the sciences is so great. Remember, since the use of your brain to godliness is one of the most important commandments to do, and God creates the world, this good against evil, so God has to put something on the other side. What's on the other side? The scientist part. And again, the idea is, if you do it for a job, 100%. Or if you do it like the Rambam, for example, or like the Ramban, that we know they were scientists, Maimonides, Nachmanides, or the Rebbe, for example, that uses science in order to, whatever they do, I don't know exactly what they do, to understand Torah better, that's one thing. Yeah, that's good. But for example, me, what do I use it for? Because I am attracted to it. Yeah, because I enjoy it. So it says, that's a big no-no. And it's even worse than watching UFC. It says, I'd rather watch UFC than watch this, than do this. Even though to our brain it looks, how can you compare between the two? Because in watching the UFC, I don't make my brain that's supposed to go towards godliness, I don't subjugate it to the Klippa. Over here, I subjugate it to the Klippa.
But there are scientists who study science as if it were Torah.
You're supposed to. If you're a scientist, that's your job, you should study it all the way through.
More than their job.
More than a job, I don't know.
Not a scientist, it's more than their job. It's their belief.
That's something else. Yeah.
But Rabbi, don't the Torah tell you if you have two jobs, you can be a scientist or you can be a wood chopper? Don't be a scientist. Don't put your money in there. Be a wood chopper. It's better for the Torah.
You write in the old time, not in our time.
Oh,
because
it doesn't?
I'll tell you, because in the old time, the money exchange between physical labor and a thinker wasn't that much. It was a tiny difference. Now it's such a big difference. Go become a scientist, make a good parnasa, be able to support your family well. That's much better than. That's right. Because like this, as a hard laborer, you'll be working all the land. You won't be able to study anyway. You know. So that's the. So you were right in the old time. See, in the old times, the vast differences in salaries didn't exist. For example, if you have two farms next to each other, how much more money can one farm do than the next farm? 10% more, 20% more. If you're really, really good, 50% more. Today, one business over here and one can be trillions of dollars, and the other business, it can be nothing. It's such a vast thing today. You can't.
That's why Yaakov did magic with I forgot the details. He did 100 times.
That's why he went to Lavan to learn this
That, yeah. But for that, you need God's help.
For everything you need God's help.
Yeah.
So someone like Einstein, Hashem didn't tell Einstein to study science.
Einstein.
Didn't want to tell Einstein, why aren't you studying Torah?
No, it's fine that Einstein can be a scientist. It's fine for him to be a scientist. By the way, before he was a scientist, he used to work in an office. He used to work in a patent office, right? And even after that, he was a professor at. So it's a job, yeah. So it's fine. There's not a problem in it. The question is that when he did have free time, what did he use? Just one more thing. How do you know what the level of a person is? If you see, many times we look at ourselves, and someone like me, for example, I don't have a choice. I have to learn all day long. Besides, by Chabad, that you have the classes that the Rebbe established for the Hasidim, which takes me probably like 2.5 hours every day to do. Besides that, I have to do a Gemara, which takes me, let's say, another an hour and a half, and I have to do this, and I have to prepare for the classes. So all day long, I probably have like 5-6 hours every day that I have to learn anyway, right? That's without my personal thing of what I want to learn. Yeah. So how do I know where am I on the service of God? Or anybody can do it by himself. It's not what you do when you do the regular stuff. When you go to your job, when you do your regular studies. It is what you do when you have free time. If I have half an hour free, what am I going to choose to do with that free half an hour? Yeah, the wife is sleeping, kids are done, everything in the house is done. What are you going to do next half an hour? You know, that's the question. If you have a desire to study something, so some days I have a desire to study, you know what, I didn't understand this part in the Torah, I'm going to check this part in the Torah. So, some days I'm going to check, which phone do I want next? Do I want the iPhone or the Android? It depends on, then you know where you are spiritually. That's when a person...
Where you are spiritually at that moment.
At that moment, it changes every second. And it changes every second. It's not, it does.